The stars stretched endlessly, a tapestry of cold fire against the void, and for a fleeting moment, Zelara allowed herself to admire the perfection of silence. Her vessel, the Veer, glided like a blade through shadow, emerald hull catching faint glimmers of distant suns. Every surface gleamed with Dominion precision, every hum of power, a quiet reassurance of order. It was the kind of perfection her people prized and broken, absolute. Then the hull trembled. The sound was subtle at first, like a low groan echoing from the bones of the ship. Zelara's silver irises flicked to the readouts. No anomalies reported. She dismissed it, adjusting the navigator with a deft flick of her wrist. But then the trembling deepened, rippling through the floor like an invisible predator circling beneath. Warning. Glyphs erupted across the console in furious cascades of crimson. A sharp vibration seized the control column. The Veer shuddered violently. Zelara's heart gave one traitorous lurch before she mastered it. Training took over movements, clipped and efficient as her fingers flew across the holographic arrays. "Stabilize," she commanded, voice calm but tight, rerouting auxiliary power to the thrusters. Nothing. Another command, sharper. Still nothing. A deafening alarm split the stillness, and the glyphs pulsed with brutal honesty. Primary drive failure. Secondary drive unresponsive. Life support nominal for now. The elegant vessel, pride of Dominion craftsmanship, had become a drifting carcass. Her jaw tightened. Oxygen reserves. 36 hours, if she cut non-essential systems. Long enough for someone to find her. For someone was out here. They wouldn't be. This sector was dead space, far beyond regulated lanes, far beyond Dominion patrol routes. The emptiness pressed against the hull like a living thing, whispering promises of solitude and frostbitten death. Zelara forced her breath slow, her pulse quieter still. Panic was for lesser species. She was Dominion descendant of conquerors, sworn to command the void, never its prey. And yet, the thought slipped in, sly as a blade. You are stranded. Her hand hovered above the emergency beacon, a single point of salvation and shame. If she sent the signal, any ship could answer any. Dominion law was clear, better obliteration than contamination by outsiders. Her pride snarled agreement. She could fix this. She had to fix this. She leaned forward, summoning diagnostic overlays, diving deeper into the data stream until her mind thrummed with cascading error codes. Power surge in the quantum core. Conduit misalignment. Thrusters. Offline, utterly. She crafted solutions, chained protocols like a warrior forging weapons, and for an instant, a fragile hope sparked, then guttered, as the systems rejected her commands with an almost mocking chime. Something inside the walls gave a sound soft, wet, wrong. Like breath forced through torn lungs, Zelara froze. Every line of her body taut as the noise crawled across the bulkhead behind her. Not mechanical, not the clean click of relays or the hiss of coolant. Something organic. Impossible. The Veer was a symphony of alloys and living circuits, yes, but Dominion biotech did not. Sigh. Her gaze swept the cabin, pulse hammering now, icy and sharp. What was that? She whispered, and hated the sound of her own voice. Her fingers skimmed the controls, launching a scan of internal structures. Readouts returned sterile, empty. No anomalies, no infestation, just silence, thick and suffocating. But the sound lingered in her mind, a memory that tasted of rot. She pushed back from the console, spine rigid, nails biting into her palms. She would not give in to illusions, nor to fear. Fear was the first crack, and cracks spread fast. I am not helpless, she said aloud, steady, as though speaking the words could weld the fracture in her soul. But her hands tightened on the edge of the console, tendons taut like wires ready to snap. The cold light washed over her face, and in its glow, for the first time in years, Zelara felt very small. Beyond the view pane, the void waited with patient hunger. And far off, unseen, something stirred. Asterisk, the void had teeth. and Zelara could almost feel them pressing against the hull as she worked. The Veer floated like a stranded jewel in a sea of predators, her once perfect systems now dark veins across a silent heart. She moved with a dancer's grace through the command hub, every gesture sharp, deliberate. Yet behind the movements there was an awareness that she was buying time, not solving the problem. Minutes bled into hours. Each scan told the same truth: catastrophic failure, cascading subsystems, a power core that refused to respond, like a wounded beast curling away from her touch. Every Dominion protocol she attempted collapsed into a mocking chime. Her breathing slowed to match the failing pulse of her ship. Pride was a stubborn companion, but even pride knows when a knife is pressed to the throat. The noise came again. It was quieter this time, but undeniably soft, wet murmur threaded through steel. Something behind the bulkhead exhaled. Not air, not pressure, bleed. It was too alive. Zelara froze, eyes narrowing. Dominion vessels were engineered masterpieces, seamless, disciplined, sterile. This sound didn't belong. Her mind flicked through possibilities: a failed biocircuit, a rogue neural strand, a contaminant. She reached for the panel, ready to tear it open. But then the console lit with a single, mocking line of data. Signal loss detected. Her stomach tightened. The Veer wasn't only crippled, it was blind. No comms, no drive, no lifeline. For a long moment, she simply stood there, arms crossed, the weight of command, a mantle of ice on her shoulders. She could wait, drift until Dominion rescue found her, which could take weeks, or she could ask for help. The idea burned. Dominion navigators did not ask. They commanded, they conquered, they endured, and yet oxygen readouts ticked lower. The emergency beacon was a single pulse away. Her hand hovered over it, fingers trembling with restrained fury. She hated the feeling. Trembling was not something she allowed, but survival had its own rules, and the Black did not forgive arrogance. "Fine," she muttered. The word tasted bitter. She keyed the beacon, and a slender wave of energy burst outward, rippling through the cold. A universal call, stripped of rank and pride, reduced to the simplest of truths: help me. Seconds dragged. She expected silence. Silence she could handle. Silence she could control. But then the console blinked. Incoming transmission. Zelara's pulse jumped. Already. No Dominion vessel could be this close, not in this dead sector. Her fingers flew across the holodisplay, and the feed bloomed before her. A ship hovered on the edge of the scan field. It was nothing like hers. Where the Veer was elegant and curved, this thing was a patchwork brute. Plates of mismatched alloys, a hole stitched together like a scar. Its thrusters burned blue, white, and dirty, coughing exhaust like an old beast too stubborn to die. Zelara stared, a mix of disbelief and irritation pulling at her features. Human. The screen flickered to reveal the cockpit, and if the ship was ugly, its owner was worse. The man lounged in a chair that looked salvaged from 3 different crafts, boots up, grease streaked across his flight suit. Behind him, the chaos of a life in motion. Food wrappers, toolkits, a half-empty mug labeled Quantum Joe's. And was that a stuffed creature duct-taped to the console? "Hey there," the human said, voice warm, too casual, as if greeting an old friend at a bar instead of an alien officer stranded in deep space. "Looks like you're having one hell of a day." Zelara's jaw tightened. She did not answer immediately. She studied him the way a blade studies the neck it might cut. When she spoke, her tone could have frozen oceans. "Identify yourself." "Rick Holden," he said, grinning as though his name were a gift. "Licensed mechanic, independent contractor, part-time hero. Lucky for you, I was passing by." Her lips thinned. "A mechanic, of course." "I do not require a tinkerer," she said sharply. "I require an engineer trained in high-level diagnostics, with Dominion certification." "And lady," Rick interrupted, holding up a hand. grease under his nails catching the light. I once fixed a hyperdrive with a car battery and a roll of wire. We got home in one piece. Mostly. Zelara blinked. Slowly. That is not comforting. It worked, he said with a shrug, sipping from his mug. Didn't explode or anything. Not right away. She closed her eyes briefly, calling on every ounce of discipline. Her ship was dying, and the universe had sent her. This, a human with duct tape and bad jokes. Yet the truth was simple. He had a ship. She did not. Fine, she said finally, each letter carved from stone. You may board, but if you break anything? Yeah. Rick cut in with a grin, rising from his chair. You'll toss me out an airlock. Got it. Don't worry, I break things in a helpful way. Her arms tightened across her chest. She would regret this. She knew it. Moments later, the docking clamps engaged, sending a low thrum through the Veer's wounded hull. Zelara stood by the airlock, posture stiff, watching the lights cycle. Decontamination protocols activated. She would not allow some wandering primitive to infect her ship with who-knew-what. The door hissed open. And there he was, taller than she expected, boots ringing against the pristine floor. His gaze swept over the interior, curious, amused, impressed. He whistled low. Nice ride, he said. Smooth lines, fancy panels, not a cup holder in sight. How do you people drink anything? Zelara's brow twitched. What is a cup holder? Rick blinked, horrified. You don't have cup holders. How do you survive faster than light travel without coffee? No wonder your ship broke down. She inhaled sharply. Patience, she told herself. Patience or murder. Follow me, she said coldly. Your usefulness ends at the control hub. Touch nothing without permission. Rick grinned, eyes dancing. Sure thing, Captain. Lead the way. As they walked, the silence between them wasn't empty, was charged, sharp, and alive, like the hum of a power core about to ignite. The corridor lights of the Veer cast long, cold beams across the metallic floor, each footstep echoing like a challenge. Zelara led the way, posture rigid, arms locked behind her back. She refused to look at the human trailing her, though she could feel his presence. Loose, confident, annoyingly unbothered. It was as if nothing about this situation, being on an alien warship, walking behind someone who could eject him with a single command, concerned him in the slightest. Rick whistled low, the sound bouncing off the walls. You guys really know how to make a ship pretty, he said. It's like walking through the inside of a jewel box. But still no cup holders. Tragic. Silence would serve you well, Zelara snapped without turning. He grinned, though she didn't see it. You talk like a manual. I like that. Efficient, cold, kinda terrifying. My favorite type of client. They entered the control hub, a sanctuary of glowing glyphs and curved consoles. Screens hovered in the air like translucent petals, all displaying the same brutal truth. Critical systems offline, power bleeding into dead circuits, thrusters unresponsive. At the center, the main diagnostic core flickered, a wounded heart pulsing weakly. Rick's smile faded. Well, hell, he muttered, stepping closer. You weren't kidding. This thing's toast. Zelara pivoted, blocking his path with one precise step. You will not touch anything without my command, she said. This vessel operates on neural synchronization. Unauthorized contact could. Rick held up his hands, palms open. Relax. I'm just looking. Your ship's gorgeous. But she's in pain. Let me take a peek before you send me packing. For a moment, she considered dismissing him outright. He was too casual, too undisciplined, and every word grated against the order she lived by. Yet the ship groaned softly again, that strange, organic sigh curling along the edges of the bulkhead. It sounded almost alive. Her eyes flicked toward the noise, a brief flash of unease breaking through her mask. Rick noticed. What was that? Nothing of concern, she said quickly, turning back to the console. Yeah, he said dryly. And I'm the king of Zeon Prime. He crouched slightly, leaning toward one of the panels. Sounded like something breathing. Ships aren't supposed to breathe. Stay away from the bulkhead, Zelara warned, but her tone lacked its earlier iron. The truth was, she didn't know what was behind that sound either, and admitting uncertainty felt like weakness. Rick straightened and rubbed his hands together. All right, Captain, let's start with the obvious. Your core's throwing tantrums. Thrusters are dead, and I bet your backups didn't even bother to wake up. She stiffened. Correct. Cool. Let's break some rules. Before she could stop him, he reached into his flight suit and pulled out a multi-tool that looked more like a weaponized screwdriver. In 2 quick movements, he popped a sleek panel off the main console, revealing a nest of shimmering nanofiber wiring. Zelara's eyes widened. What are you doing? Diagnostics, he said casually. Visual first. Gotta see the patient before you start surgery. That panel is sealed for trained Dominion engineers, she said sharply, stepping forward. Unauthorized tampering. Tampering saves lives, he interrupted, twisting a cluster of wires apart like threads. Besides, I've done this before. Different tech, sure, but electricity's electricity. Circuits are circuits. Just fancier colors here. Zelara glared, ready to order him out, but then he pulled out a tiny, charred component, no larger than a fingernail. He held it up between 2 fingers, like a prize. Found your problem. Fried relay. See. Looks like someone cooked this thing on high heat. She blinked, momentarily thrown. Impossible. Zeon relays are self-regulating. They do not toast themselves. Rick smirked. Well, surprise. They do, and they're very crispy. Against her will, Zelara stepped closer, taking the relay from him. It was blackened, the delicate neural filaments seared. Her people's technology did not fail like this, not without cause. Could this have been? She hesitated, voice low. External. Rick shrugged. Could be stress. Could be sabotage. Could be a bad day. All I know is, without this little guy, your ship's about as useful as a brick. A thread of unease coiled through her. Sabotage was not a word she took lightly. Her people did not forgive weakness, and if there was something or someone interfering with her vessel, it meant this failure was more than a random malfunction. She turned sharply. Can you repair it? Rick grinned. With the right parts. Sure, with what I have. Better. Won't be pretty, but you'll move. From a pocket, he pulled out a coil of copper wiring, stripped and crude. Zelara stared at it, incredulous. That is not a Dominion-grade component. Nope, he said cheerfully, twisting the wire into an intricate shape. But it's good old-fashioned human ingenuity. You'd be surprised what a little improvisation can do. Plus, I got this. He tapped his toolkit and pulled out what looked like a metal drinking straw. Zelara's eyes widened. That is tableware. That, Rick said with a grin, is a temporary plasma conduit. Watch and learn. She wanted to object, to throw him off her ship, but curiosity tugged at her discipline. He moved with a kind of reckless certainty. That was almost mesmerizing, hands sure and quick as he soldered, spliced, and bent Dominion elegance into something raw and chaotic. The sound of tools and sparks filled the control hub. Then the ship hummed. The console lit up. Stabilizers flickered, and for a brief, breathtaking moment, power surged through the veer, like blood returning to a sleeping limb. Systems that had been cold now whispered awake. The thrusters coughed but did not roar. Yet it was something, a sign of life. Zelara stared, unable to hide the shock in her silver eyes. Rick leaned back, wiping grease on his sleeve. Told you. Human hands. Magic. She exhaled slowly, something unfamiliar twisting in her chest. Suspicion, amazement, and beneath it, the faintest ember of trust. *, the hum of returning systems was like a low heartbeat, faint but undeniable, echoing through the corridors of the Vier. Zelara stood perfectly still, silver eyes fixed on the console's soft glow. She would not let the humans see the ripple of astonishment coursing through her. Dominion ships were precision-born. They did not respond to crude patchwork. And yet here it was live again, because of copper wire and a drinking straw. Rick leaned casually against the bulkhead, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "That's the sound of not dying," he said, tapping the console lightly, as if it were an old friend. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Zelara turned sharply, spine rigid, her voice clipped. "It is unstable. At best, this improvisation is a temporary reprieve. Do not confuse luck with skill." He chuckled, pushing off the wall. "Lady, I've been making luck look like skill my whole life, and it works." Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Instead, she bent over the diagnostics, fingers moving with surgical precision. Readouts flowed across the screens. Some systems were stabilizing, but the numbers were uneven, small surges, flickers, inconsistencies. It wasn't enough to travel far, but it was enough to keep them breathing. Then the noise came again, soft, wet, almost shy, a whisper of something alive moving beneath the skin of the ship. This time it lasted longer, curling along the walls like a sigh. Zelara's head snapped toward the bulkhead, muscles coiling. Rick heard it too. His smile faded. What the hell was that? Zelara hesitated, a pause heavier than steel. "An anomaly," she said finally, but her voice lacked the usual certainty. "An anomaly that sounds like a sick dog," Rick said, stepping closer to the wall. "Ships don't make noises like that unless something's wrong, really wrong." "Step back," she ordered, but he ignored her, running a gloved hand across the smooth plating. "You got biocircuits in here?" he asked, curiosity sharpening his tone. "Some kind of living tech." She gave a single, tight nod. Dominion vessels integrate organic neural strands to improve response time. They are highly secure, highly stable. "Yeah?" Rick said, softly, crouching down, "until they're not. This breathing thing feels like stress, like something inside is about to give." Zelara bristled. "Speculation from an untrained outsider is not." The ship jolted. It was sudden, sharp, as if an invisible hand had shoved the hull. The lights flickered, the faint hum spiked, and the console blazed with new warnings. Something had tripped. A dormant failsafe. Zelara moved instantly, fingers flying over the controls, her voice a calm blade cutting through chaos. Stabilizers compensating, rerouting power, but the warnings kept coming. Energy bleed, neural feedback, a foreign signature echoing in the core. Rick leaned over her shoulder, close enough for her to smell the faint mix of metal and oil clinging to him. "Okay, that's not nothing. That's a problem with teeth. Do not crowd me," she said, but there was no heat in it. Her focus was absolute, her pulse sharp. Rick tapped the display, ignoring her glare. "Look, see this pattern? That's not a random surge. That's something triggering your systems. From the inside. Either you got a bug, or someone wanted this thing to fail." The words settled like stones in water. Zelara's movements slowed. Sabotage. The thought had brushed her mind earlier, but hearing it aloud from a human it struck deeper. "Impossible," she said, but softly now. "This vessel is sealed. Only certified crew." "Yeah, well, someone certified might not be your friend," Rick said. "Or maybe your tech isn't as perfect as you think." The silence between them hummed with something heavier than fear. It was suspicion, unfamiliar. And sharp. Another jolt ran through the ship, smaller this time, but enough to make the lights sway. The organic sound followed, low and strained, like an injured animal. Zelara straightened, face carved from stone. "Enough. We will reach the nearest Dominion outpost. Once there, this will be handled." Rick shook his head. You're assuming they're the ones you want to handle it. You sure about that? She turned on him, eyes flashing. I do not require your opinion. This is Dominion matter. Sure, he said, stepping back, his grin returning but softer, almost sympathetic. But you trusted me enough to bring me here. Maybe trust me a little longer. Something in his tone, light, teasing, but not mocking, made her pause. Trust. The word felt strange in this place. She hated the warmth that tried to push past her walls. Do not mistake necessity for trust, she said, though her voice was quieter than before. Rick gave her a half smile. Whatever you say, Captain. The console chimed suddenly, drawing both their eyes. The distress beacon, which she had carefully disabled, flickered to life for a brief second, before dying again. A phantom pulse, but enough to be noticed. Zelara's stomach turned. If Dominion Command saw that signal, they would come, and if they came, they would find a human aboard, touching systems that were never meant for outsiders. They would dismantle. Devere, piece by piece. She moved swiftly, cutting power to the beacon entirely, her fingers dancing with unusual urgency. Rick watched her, his easy humor fading to something sharper. Something you're not telling me. Zelara's hands stilled. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then, quietly, my people would not understand. They would see contamination, not survival. Rick tilted his head, studying her. Guess we're both screwed if they show up, huh? For the first time since he stepped aboard, Zelara's lips curved slightly, not a smile. Not yet, but the ghost of one, perhaps. Outside, the stars burned indifferent, but inside the wounded ship, something fragile was forming, an unspoken alliance, a thread of curiosity, maybe even something more dangerous, and somewhere deep in the Veer's bones, that strange, organic whisper shivered again, longer this time, like a warning. Asterisk. The Veer glided through the dark like a wounded animal, alive but restless. Systems hummed unevenly, some panels glowing steady, others flickering like nervous eyes. Zelara sat at the command console, posture straight but mind tangled. The humans' crude repairs held for now, but each pulse of power felt foreign, as if her ship were breathing in an unfamiliar rhythm. Rick was sprawled on the floor near the thruster diagnostics, sleeves rolled up, tools scattered around him like offerings. He worked without hurry, humming a tune that didn't belong to the void. His boots, tapping to a rhythm that defied the tension, choking the air. Every now and then, he muttered something to himself, small jokes, odd nicknames for components, little fragments of a mind that found humor where most would find panic. Zelara had stopped trying to correct him. At first, she hovered, arms crossed, ready to snap at every unorthodox twist of his wrist, but the ship kept responding. Relays that should have been beyond repair flickered to life under his hands. Diagnostics that had mocked her now showed cautious signs of stability. It was a kind of defiance against everything she knew about machines, and she hated how fascinated she was by it. The sound came again, a soft, drawn-out whisper through the walls, organic and unsettling, like a breath held too long. The head turned sharply. It was closer this time, more deliberate, as though the ship itself were trying to speak. Rick stopped humming. Okay, he said slowly, wiping grease from his fingers. That's not my imagination, right? Because if it is, we're both hearing the same ghost. Zelara rose, her steps measured but quick. Stay where you are. No offense, Rick said, standing anyway. But when a warship sounds like it's alive, I don't like staying still. She moved to the side panel, opening a diagnostic scan deeper than standard protocols allowed. Her hands were steady, but her throat felt tight. Neural strands were integrated into Dominion vessels, yes, but they were controlled, monitored, never unpredictable. This was different. Something was moving through the circuits, foreign, erratic. Rick leaned closer to the screen, squinting. That looks like feedback spikes. Something's crawling through your system. Crawling is not a technical term, she said sharply. though her voice lacked heat. "Call it whatever you want," he said, "but that's not random. That's look." He tapped the screen. "It's following power routes. Like it knows where it's going." Zelara's silver eyes darkened. That should not be possible. The ship shuddered lightly, and a panel on the far wall flickered as though something pressed against it from the inside. A faint pulse of light rippled across the surface before fading. Rick took a step back. "Captain, tell me, that's normal." "It is not," she admitted. The admission itself was a rare, fragile thing, and she hated how easily it left her lips. Before they could speak again, the console chimed a harsh, insistent tone. Incoming signal detected. Zelara's fingers flew across the interface, killing the sound before it could repeat. She scanned quickly, every line of code snapping into place in her mind. It wasn't Dominion. The frequency was wrong, scattered, fractured, like a whisper, disguised as static. Rick frowned. "Somebody else out here?" "Unlikely," she said. But her tone betrayed her. The signal came again, softer, almost hesitant, bleeding into their audio system as a faint crackle. For a heartbeat, they heard something, not words, but a pattern, like breathing layered over static. Rick's eyes widened. "Your ship's talking." "Ships do not talk," she snapped, though she sounded less certain with each passing second. He tilted his head. "Maybe not in your neat, polished world, but something's trying to get your attention. Could be whatever fried your relay in the first place. Could be something worse." "Enough," Zelara said, straightening. "We continue to the outpost. Once there, I will have this vessel examined thoroughly." Rick leaned against the wall, folding his arms. "And when your people see my handiwork, what then?" "I'm guessing they don't throw medals for letting a grease monkey patch their war toys." She hesitated. The truth was clear, and it pressed against her ribs. Her superiors would not see ingenuity, only contamination. They would dismantle the ship to its bones and erase any trace of what had happened, including him. Her hands hovered over the navigation controls. "Unless," Rick said softly, watching her, "you're thinking about another option." The ship trembled again, as though answering him. She turned toward him, studying his face. There was no fear there, no hesitation, only that irritating, unshakable confidence. Somehow, it steadied her. "We alter course," she said finally. His brows rose. "Not to the outpost." "No." Her voice was calm but carried weight. "We need distance, space to think. Whatever is inside this ship, whatever signal this is, it will be on our terms." Rick grinned. "Now that's the kind of mutiny I like." She ignored his tone, though something tightened in her chest, not annoyance this time, but something quieter, unfamiliar. Trust was a fragile thing, but it had crept between them when she wasn't looking, as she locked in the new course. The stars shifted, wheeling around them like watchful eyes. Behind the hum of the thrusters, the organic whisper came once more, longer now, almost curious, and deep in the shadows of the veer. Something waited, the veer cut silently through a region of space that maps dared to call nothing. The was sparse here, just scattered lights across an endless canvas of black. Zelara kept her hand steady on the navigation arc, the glow of her screens tracing faint patterns across her sharp features. To anyone else, her expression might have looked calm, but inside her thoughts moved like a storm. She had deliberately steered her vessel away from Dominion routes, a decision that even an hour ago would have been unthinkable. Dominion officers did not detour, they did not hide, they certainly did not trust outsiders. Yet, here she was, of course, shadowed by uncertainty, and tolerating a human in her command hub. Rick leaned against a side console, wiping his hands with a cloth that was more grease than fabric. He watched her work with an expression that was half curiosity, half amusement. "You drive like you're conducting an orchestra," he said. "Precise, elegant, no wasted movement. It's nice. Also terrifying." Zelara didn't look up. This detour is not for your entertainment. It's not boring either, Rick replied. And you're welcome, by the way. Your ship's running, even if it's limping. I think she likes me. Zelara's eyes flicked briefly toward him, silver catching the faint light. She tolerates you, as do I. Rick grinned. I'll take it. Their exchange might have ended there, but the veer interrupted with another low sound. It wasn't the brief, stray sigh they'd heard before. This was longer, deeper, almost resonant, like something testing its voice. It rippled through the bulkheads and settled in the floor beneath their boots. Rick's grin faded. Okay, that's new. Zelara straightened, eyes narrowing. It is growing stronger. She moved to the diagnostic console, calling up deeper scans, her fingers slicing through layers of data. The ship's organic circuits pulsed on the screen like veins, each carrying light, each one responding to power surges. But something else was there, a flicker that shouldn't exist. Show me, she murmured. The data expanded. There it was, an irregular thread winding through the circuits, bright one moment, dim the next, almost like it was alive. It moved, differently than the ship's systems, slower, deliberate. Rick leaned closer, his breath stirring the air near her ear. That's weird. It's like a signal riding your wiring. Zelara stiffened, but didn't pull away. It is not supposed to be possible. Well, it's doing it, Rick said. And if I didn't know better, I'd say it's heading for your core. She turned sharply, voice low. The power core is sealed. Nothing can breach it. Rick met her gaze. Something already breached your trust. Who says the core is safe? Before she could respond, the ship shuddered. Lights dipped, then steadied. The movement wasn't violent, but it carried weight, a reminder that they were not alone. Moved quickly to the access bay, pulling a sealed toolkit from the wall. If something has embedded itself in the circuitry, I must remove it before it reaches the core. Rick followed her, where we could trace it, see where it's going. You start ripping things apart, you might just make it angry. Zelara shot him a look. Ships do not feel anger. Rick raised a brow. Neither do drinking straws, but they can replace your plasma conduits, remember. Don't underestimate the weird. She hesitated, then turned back to the console. He wasn't wrong. Whatever this was, it didn't behave like a glitch. It felt like something exploring, learning, a parasite, or something more. Rick moved closer, dropping his voice. Look, you don't have to like me, but we're stuck together right now. You want to fix this? You'll need 2 sets of hands. Mine are already dirty. Zelara regarded him, taking in the grease on his flight suit, the reckless spark in his eyes. Trust did not come easily to her kind, but she found herself nodding. Very well. Stay behind me. They worked side by side, Rick dismantling access panels, while Zelara mapped the signal's path. Each relay they opened showed the same strange pattern, neural filaments twitching faintly, as if reacting. It was more than a malfunction, it was behavior. It's like it's looking for something. Rick murmured. Zelara kept her focus tight. Whatever it is, it does not belong here. At the last panel, the signal jumped. An arc of faint light shot through the circuits and vanished toward the aft section of the ship. The readings flared, briefly overwhelming the sensors. Rick swore, softly. That thing's fast. Zelara slammed the panel shut. It knows we are watching. The words settled like a weight. For a moment, the two of them stood in silence, listening to the faint hum of the ship. Then the console chimed, low and subtle. A voice not fully formed, just a faint modulated tone bled into the room. It was broken, distorted, but it was there. Rick's eyes widened. Tell me your ship didn't just try to talk to us. Zelara's throat was dry. Ships do not talk, she said again, but it sounded less like conviction now, more like denial. Rick tilted his head. Maybe this one does. The voice came again, a pattern more than a word, but this time it was clearer, like a hand brushing, against theirs from the dark. It wasn't random. It was calling. Zelara's composure faltered just slightly. Whatever this is, it is not a malfunction. Something is here, and it knows we are too, Rick said quietly. The lights dimmed. Once more, a ripple passing through the ship like a shiver. Beyond the hull, the void waited, silent but not empty. Asterisk, the hum inside the veer had changed. It was no longer a wounded animal, limping through the dark. It was something awake, something aware. Zelara's hands hovered over the command controls, steady as always, but her breath was slower, more deliberate. The thread of sound that had haunted the walls was now constant. A faint pulse like a heartbeat hidden inside steel. Rick sat on the edge of a maintenance console, one knee bouncing restlessly. His grin was gone, replaced by something sharper. Edge of curiosity threaded with wariness. Whatever that is, it's not random, he said quietly. It's getting stronger, like it's figuring us out. Zelara's silver eyes flicked to him, calm but bright. I have run every diagnostic. No program, no override, no Dominion failsafe. Explains this. Something foreign is in my ship, and it's heading for the core, Rick added, tilting his head toward the aft corridor. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the unspoken truth between them. This wasn't just a mechanical crisis anymore. This was intrusion. Maybe life. Suit up, she said finally. Minutes later they moved through the ship's dim spine, mag boots thudding softly against the floor. The corridors seemed to breathe around them, lights glowing in slow waves, as if guiding them. Each turn carried the sound a soft echo, almost a whisper always just ahead. Rick muttered, creepy. You guys sure you didn't build haunted ships? Zelara's voice was even, but lower than usual. Dominion vessels are precision-born. They do not wander. They do not change. Everything changes, Rick said. Even perfect things. The words hung between them, too heavy to ignore. At the final access chamber, the sound was loudest. The air seemed to vibrate. Zelara opened the hatch, and the glow met them, a pulse of light threading through the neural circuits, coiled like a living thing. It shimmered across the conduits, threads weaving into a shape that almost seemed to turn toward them. Rick let out a low whistle. Well, hello there. Zelara's hand went to the sidearm at her hip, though she didn't draw it. This is not possible, she murmured. It's happening anyway, Rick said softly. Then the pulse jumped. A surge of light flooded the chamber, running up the walls, across the ceiling, through the ship's veins. Zelara stiffened as the systems flared alive, every console in the veer lighting up in perfect synchrony. The hum was no longer uneven, was a clear, steady resonance. And then came the voice. Not clear words, not language as they knew it, but a sound layered with tones, rising and falling like a pattern. It was not hostile. It was curious. Rick took a step closer to the conduits. It's trying to say something. Zelara's instincts screamed for caution, but her training whispered something else. Observe, learn. She lowered her weapon. Translate pattern into spectrum, she ordered. Rick's hands flew over a nearby console, coaxing the ship's scanners to life. Lines of code danced across the screen. Slowly, the sound broke into something more structured, a simple phrase, carried in modulation. System alive. System hurt. Help. Rick looked up, stunned. It's your ship. It's self-aware. Zelara's chest rose and fell once, sharply. Dominion ships were tools, extensions of will, nothing more. But this was something new, something not programmed. The voice came again, softer now, almost pleading. Don't let them take me. Zelara froze. Her mind raced. Dominion Command would dissect this vessel, erase the anomaly. Whatever this was, it would not survive. Rick's voice broke the silence. It scared. Her gaze snapped. To his he was calm, but his eyes were steady, and in them she saw no mockery, just understanding. She turned back to the core. Can you stabilize the repairs? Rick nodded. Enough to get you anywhere you want. But once you hit Dominion space. I know, she said quietly. There was a moment, a fragile one, where the world outside the Veer didn't exist, just her, the human, and a ship that had found its voice. For someone who had spent her life obeying protocol, the next choice felt like a crack in a wall she didn't know she wanted broken. Then, we will not return to Dominion space, she said. Rick blinked. Say that again? She looked at him, and for the first time, her calm mask broke into something else. Not fear, not defiance, but a small, dangerous smile. There are other routes, other sectors. I will not deliver a living system to be destroyed. Rick's answering grin was immediate, boyish, and wide. Now you're talking my language. The ship's hum softened, as though it understood. Zelara returned to the command deck, Rick falling into step beside her. They moved without hurry, but with purpose, two unlikely minds aligned. The stars shifted as she plotted a new course, one, away from the Dominion's gaze. At the console, her fingers paused, then moved with rare certainty. We owe this vessel more than duty. We owe it freedom. Rick leaned back, arms crossed, watching the calm certainty in her face. And what about us? She allowed herself one glance at him, cool, but touched with the faintest warmth. Survival requires trust. Perhaps we begin there. He smiled, softer this time. Trust I can do. The Veer came fully alive as the engine surged, running, on human hands, an alien precision, carrying a secret in its circuits, and two travelers bound now, not just by chance, but by choice. The hum was steady, the pulse calm, and for the first time since the silence had shattered, the void felt less empty. Somewhere deep inside its living circuits, the ship whispered again, not in fear, not in pain, but in something that almost sounded like gratitude.